So, ladies, I have another devotion for you here, and I call this God's Approval. And it's taken really in part from a verse that I sent you, Audrey, just a few days ago, from 2 Corinthians chapter 10. And this is verse 17, and I'll read it for both of you here. It says, "But he who glories," right? "Let him glory in the Lord." In other words, let him or her care about what God thinks, not so much about what the people think or even he or herself thinks. "For not he who commends himself is approved, but whom the Lord commends." It's based on what God thinks of you. And I think that in the very near future, that's going to be one of the key verses for us as we go about our daily lives, because I think that very soon now, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but the United States is probably going to find itself in a war with China. And I know that these messages that I give both of you become more ominous, right? And again, as was my intent in the very beginning when I started these several years back, these are little insights that I share with both of you. Not necessarily inspired or anything like that. These are my opinions, right? A father's fallible devotions, not infallible, but fallible devotions. But I think that very soon we're probably going to be in a war with China, and it's probably going to be a war that goes very badly for the United States. If we do win it, we'll win it at great cost. Probably millions dead, probably a burned out power grid nationwide from EMPs, multiple EMPs going off, and there may be, I think, the very real possibility of some of our cities, maybe many of our cities, being destroyed in this country by ballistic missiles and other weapons that China has. But that's what I think is ahead. And I think that people still are not really prepared for this. Of course, the question once again remains, how do you prepare for this? And I say to both of you once again, begin, if you have not yet begun, post haste, to put together tangible, and I guess that's the key word here, right? Tangible covert networks within both your churches and your families, so that you can maintain some kind of connectivity when what I said in my previous message happens. That is the scattering, because I think that there will be a scattering of church families from one another and of regular families from one another. So we need to have some sort of a system in place to maintain that connectivity. And we need to take what Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 10 to heart here in verses 17 and 18. And I'm going to read it again. I usually don't read the same verse several times in a devotion, but this is Paul. He says, "But he who glories, let him glory in the Lord." In other words, care more about what God thinks. Put your faith, put your hope in the Lord. "For not he who commends himself is approved," right? So it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what your pastor thinks, what anybody thinks of you, right? "But whom the Lord commends." That is what God thinks. And I think as we increasingly begin to fall into a state of war, and I believe this is going to happen very soon now, probably the next few months, maybe a year, but I don't think, it's my opinion, obviously, my fallible opinion, that it's not probably going to be too much longer than that. We're going to have to ground ourselves in God, in His opinion, in His promises. Well, that's about all I had to say to either of you. God bless you both.